So today we're going to be continuing to take a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. We're now on episode 24 of the series, and we are moving right along. In the last episode, we saw the scramble for Africa take place as the European powers divided up this continent and filled it in completely. So there are multiple Western European powers on this continent now, including the Dutch team, the Dark Cyan team, the Irish team. Of course, we still have the OG African country, and we also have this one over here, which survived the colonization in the last episode. We also saw a war take place in the Balkans, a little bit more colonization around the world, and we missed the Daily Britain update. So I apologize for that. Sometimes I just forget to do it, but sometimes I feel like there's really nothing I can do because, there's not a lot happening here with the two outside powers on the British Isles. But anyway, if you do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I do want to say that I've had a, I've had a renaissance with content making. I was thinking of just ideas of what I can do with the channel outside of mapping, and even what I can do with mapping, and it just kind of rejuvenated me and made me feel a lot more happy with content creation. So that's really good for me and the channel. But I have some videos that I want to do. I have a new series I want to start in a game. On top of that game series, I also want to do like more political videos surrounding the US election coming up. And yeah, so expect more videos coming out soon outside of Wednesday and Saturday. Now I'm not sure when this is going to start, and I'm not sure how long it's going to last with college happening, but just expect it. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump straight into our war scenario. So like I said, Africa got completely colonized in the last episode, leaving only, I think, 3 main African countries left, being this Tanzanian country, the Somali coast country, and then of course the northwestern African country. Outside of that, it is all European. Oh, and then also South Africa. But outside of that, it is only European. Now let's talk about trade routes, because we haven't talked about trade routes in a hot second. Now I'm sure that over time trade routes, just like in real life, are going to kind of get outdated. Now at this point, they're probably still like used, but definitely not as much as they used to. I think at this point it's only fair that we fully update the trade route map to see what it looks like right at its peak. And this is what we end up getting. So a lot of things to cover here, but mostly Europe is almost fully connected up with each other. There's only Central Europe really that remains unconnected, but these countries aren't typically too strong to begin with. So I don't think there's much of a problem with such thing, but all of the powerful countries have connection at least. And then we move over to the Middle East. It is also a lot more connected. The blue team has official access to the trade route. Over to Africa, there's actually one along the northern coast now, and it even goes down the Nile River Basin. Now over to Central Asia, where not a lot actually happened. The red team's dream of completely, being the crossroads of Asia never came to fruition because of 2 things. 1, the geographical challenge that is presented with the Himalayan mountains, and 2, lack of participation on the Lime team's part. They never ever really sat down to build this road, and that's mostly because of internal political issues and lack of funding and public support for such a project. But the red team is still fairly satisfied with what they have been able to do. As you can see, they are still pretty much the crossroads of Asia, even without this southern route connecting them. But this is probably the last time we'll ever take a look at the trade routes screen. And yeah, goodbye. So the first thing that we're going to do outside of that is take a look at the alliance map. Now, as you can see, there is only one alliance in the world at this point, and that's not too realistic considering the circumstances and the challenges that these countries have been through. Now, the Triangle Alliance at this point is pretty much broken up. There's too much diversity between the two sides, being, Iberia and Africa, and that mostly came into play after the scramble for Africa. Now, the northern African country here, as I stated earlier, was very against this idea of scrambling for Africa and dividing the continent up amongst foreign powers. This created a split within the alliance, as this country down here really didn't want anything to do with Iberia anymore. Now, remember, the blue team pretty much had to go along with the European powers so they wouldn't get split up as well, so they just kind of let them have at it. But after this scramble is over, they will officially withdraw from the Triangle Alliance, leaving just the 2 Iberian countries within this Triangle Alliance. However, they are shopping for a new partner, and they will find one just north of their border, being the French Green country. They joined this alliance after working with them in the past, and this honestly is a good fit for them because they are all 3 right in this region. They also all 3 have a common enemy, being this lighter blue country here, but those tensions have since slowed down. But now let's go ahead and jump over the pond to South America, where we have a lot of colonization happening at once. The Lime team's tiny colony over here in South America has slowly been getting more and more strong, as the Lime team has been they're not super focused on it, but there is a department within their government which is, very pro-colonization. They are mainly the department that is focusing in on Indonesia, but after discovering this part of South America, they are also now super invested in making their empire global. So while the public support and government support isn't too high for this continued growth, the department will still work at it, making sure that this colony grows into a strong one. So they will continue to grow it along the South American coast. And they will also start to cut inwards, going towards the Atlantic Ocean, which would help them out a lot. So with word being out that the Lime team is now taking over another continent, the world will scramble to colonize South America. Now the reason the world is doing this, and I don't want to say scramble as in like, you know, the scramble for Africa, because this will be a lot less neat. It's going to be a lot more messy, but the world doesn't necessarily like the Lime team's expansion. And that's because they're the strongest country in the world, so typically those countries aren't well liked. So yeah. And the first country to really take notice of this and start their expansion is the Dark Cyan team in Iberia. They will make their South American colony pretty large, just like their claim in Africa, which is the biggest claim in Africa. They will focus on the Pacific coastal areas of South America, taking over areas where Ecuador and Peru are in modern day. They will also capitalize on the Amazon rainforest, starting a huge lumber tycoon over it. Tycoon, is that the right word for that? Sort of. Anyway, they will finish up their colonial claim in South America, having it end up look something like this. And now I make the borders look nice and pretty. I don't think pretty is the right word for that, but we'll go with it. The African Union will also go ahead and expand their colony, but just not as much, as their personal support for colonization is fairly low considering the events that just occurred on their continent. In fact, the public is mostly against the African Union's colonization, and eventually the program sees a cease in expansion as the politics behind it are becoming a little too divided. Now back over to the Dark Cyan country, just real quick, they do go ahead and expand into Central America, which is of course outside of South America, but for the most part they will stop and slow down as their, I guess, empire at this point is becoming way too large. The Irish country will go ahead and hop across the pond as well, meeting up with the border of the African Union and colonizing much of southern Brazil into Uruguay and even down into Argentina. The Irish are very good at colonizing in this timeline, which honestly is kind of unrealistic considering the small island that they are on. Now, I wouldn't put it past Ireland. You know, Ireland's been through a lot, so maybe they could fully go ham at this. But in order to make it a little bit more realistic and also to add some beef up to the Irish country, which is a very weird beef up for the Irish country, that's odd. To strengthen the Irish country, the leader will decide to go to war with the British Isles, invading into the yellow country right here and fully annexing it. This country is fairly new, only being born 2 episodes ago, but here they cease to exist after the invasion via the Irish, who are making themselves a pretty notable Celtic union at this point. They're just missing a little bit of northern Scotland, and then of course Cornwall and a little bit more Wales, and I guess Brittany as well. On top of their expansion in their home British Isles, they will also go ahead and finish off Quebec, fully colonizing this part of the Americas. Now at this point, I do want to make a point very clear. The Berlin Conference happened in the 1880s, 90s? I forgot already. But that happened in the late 1800s, and then in the early 1900s, you know, like 1914, World War I started. That's about 20 to 30 years after the Berlin Conference. And we already had our Berlin Conference, except it was the Amsterdam Conference, so just something to keep in mind. Now, of course, there are some things that are not continuous, such as the United States does not exist, and it's not even filled in all the way. And also, there really aren't that many great powers in Europe. Now, there are, of course, you know, you have the Dutch country, the Dark Cyan team, and the Red team. Those are your top 3 powers in the European continent. Outside of that, there's some fairly weaker countries. You know, Central Europe is extremely weak. Any country could just stroll in there and wipe them out right away. But alas, elsewhere tensions are rising, specifically within the Gold Country and the Russian country. Remember, these two didn't really like each other at first, after the Russian country decided to go all ham and start really stealing population from other countries. The Gold team in particular was not happy with this, and tensions between these two are at an all-time high. Now, of course, the Russian country is nowhere near as strong as the Gold country, as these guys are mostly just land and not power. I just got interrupted. I don't have no idea what I was talking about for a second, but we're back now. I was talking about the tensions between these two countries, I think. But what I'm getting at is that war between these two countries is on the horizon. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. Both countries are gearing up for it, but before, there is some preparation that will take place, specifically by the Gold team. These guys feel as if they can get enough people on their side, they might be able to really transform Europe into a better scape. More so, a more democratic scape. Because as of now, the world is full of oligarchies and monarchies. You know, the Lime team has an oligarchy, the Brown team has a monarchy, and really there's like a dual monarchy happening in this union, which is pretty cool. But there is not a lot of democratic countries. So the Gold team starts recruiting recruiting an alliance, which we will be calling the Circle Gang. And a country that is interested in joining right away is, interestingly enough, going to be the Purple Team. Now remember, this is the technical true successor of the Red Team with royal blood. The lady who rules this country is very democratic appealing. You know, they like the idea of democracy, and they're even starting to implement it within their own country. However, she is still technically a monarch and a queen of this country, but they are just in the process of transitioning into a more democratic country. Maybe she stays the ruler for now, but in the future, there could be elected leaders. She wants to join the Circle Alliance. She gets the protection of the Gold Team, a top 10 power in the world. And other countries will be interested in this alliance. Such countries include this country, which was funded by the Gold Team in their independence campaign, and interestingly enough, the Purple Team. Now, the Purple Team isn't really known for their kindness and democratic values. They're quite war-ish, you know, they're warmongers. They just invaded a country over here in the last episode, and they invaded Corsica. And these guys aren't relatively, like, they're not super strong, especially considering when you're comparing them to what they once were. But they want to join this alliance, and maybe it's because of the Gold Team, maybe it's because of the ideals, who really knows? But a lot of countries, including the Brown Team, will slander this move and start to slander the Circle Alliance because it doesn't really uphold the true values of, you know, the Gold Team and the Pink Team. So they'll get a bad rep, but it only causes tensions from here. The Brown Team and the Gold Team begin to beef, and then of course there's the whole thing down here with the Red Team and the Gold Team. If you remember, the Gold Team attacked the Red Team in a way, and even has some of their old claims right here. I mean, you can see that the Red Team used to be right here from this uncolored pixel, so that just proves that the Red Team has been through a lot. And remember, the Red Team and the Orange Team are also very close together. There's a set of, I think it was twin brothers, who rule these two countries together. And then there's the Blue Team, there's a Lime Team in this region. So really, if this does escalate, it could be huge. And I'm not spoiling anything, but maybe we'll see what happens in the next episode. But for now, let's go ahead and continue on with our colonization, because we're almost done filling in this map. Over to the Americas, the French Green Team, having a little bit more freedom after colonizing Africa, will start to colonize a lot of Canada, moving into the central area of this ginormous open field of land, or I should say open forest of land. They will also wrap around and be the first country up here to these Canadian islands, I guess other than the Irish country, but they were already kind of here with Greenland. And they will start taking over these islands, getting up near the Arctic Circle, but they won't go too far because there's not a lot of value in them as of now. I mean, I'm sure there's oil galore, but they don't have that technology just yet. They're almost there though. The Brown Team will expand their American colony a tiny bit. However, due to some unspecified reasons, they have very much slowed down their colonization campaign almost to a halt, as their last expansion takes place in the Yucatan Peninsula. And other than that, there's no more movement by the Brown Team, which is pretty surprising for a lot of countries, considering that they are the second strongest country in the world at this point. The military might could even rival the Lime Team, but their economy definitely does not. But they're seriously, you know, they're up there in strength. So it's kind of like a what is happening kind of thing with the Brown Team stopping their colonization. In a lot of hostile countries with the Brown Team are put on alert. You know, these guys might be gearing up for something, who knows? But now we need to talk about Korea and their colony in the Americas. Korea used to be a fairly strong and representative country. However, they lost the war to China and really were just kind of embarrassed. Other than their own peninsula, they don't have any claims outside of the world other than Alaska. And let me tell you, they're really struggling with this colony. Maintaining a colony that is halfway across the Pacific Ocean, and the fact that, you know, you don't even own Japan, so you can't really use Japan as a staging ground to go across the ocean, is very tiring on one's economy and the department which handles colonization. So the Korean leadership will make a very hard decision to let go of their claims within the Americas, but they don't want to just give it up. They want to sell it. And if they are able to sell it, maybe they can rejuvenate their economy and perhaps, you know, start to expand their country once more. Although, I mean, I don't know if you want to do that, considering that these guys are friendly with these guys, and these guys give you a whooping the last time you fought them, so maybe you shouldn't do that. But anyway, they are looking to sell Alaska, much like how it happened in real life, except the world at that point was a lot more filled in, and there really weren't any colonial powers over here anymore other than Great Britain, who had Canada. So Russia sold it to America because I guess they were offering the most. I actually don't remember how the Alaska purchase went down. But Korea puts this chunk of land on the market, which would be a lot more than what it sold for in real life, because Alaska, you know, it goes all the way down to the Pacific coast and into California at this point. So this is going to be a lot more valuable and a lot more harder to purchase. The Brown Team will go ahead and opt out of this purchase, stating that they are saving up for something else, interestingly enough. But try to make a guess as to who will buy Alaska. It will be a European power, maybe it will be an Asian power over here, maybe it's China, which would be kind of funny. economy. But now for the grand reveal, who buys Alaska? Well, the Korean team will make a big deal with the Lime team to sell Alaska over to the strongest country in the world and the top economy in the world. The Lime team has really just increased its size to an unfathomable amount, and their empire now spans across multiple continents. In fact, it spans across every continent except for Europe. And this is the peak of the Lime team. They are as strong as they will get. They have so many outer colonies and resources within. Really, they're unstoppable at this point. But if you've been paying attention, you'll know that the Lime team has been on the political decline. They're losing stability, and people within are becoming kind of restless, especially considering the genocide which took place over here in the Middle East against their own people. The Alaskan Purchase will put a dent in the Lime team economy, and eventually some handling goes very wrong and their economy starts to decline very rapidly. The country will go into a political crisis and try to avert the inherent downfall of their economy, which would undoubtedly lead to the collapse of their empire. The oligarchy becomes very flustered within, and their leader kind of is just outcasted because he lost all his political power to that oligarchy. The group begins to fight amongst itself, and we'll discuss more in the next episode. We're ending it there. I don't want to go any further with the Lime team because, you never know what could happen between episodes. Maybe the Lime team fixes what's happening and they remain a top power in the world, or maybe they collapse and maybe they lose their empire. We also have to remember, there's a war brewing in Europe. The Russian country and the Gold country are very against each other. And, the Brown team is also very against the Circle country because of their lack of ideal truthfulness. The loyalty to the ideal of democracy is non-existent, and the Brown team finds that kind of insulting to the whole civilization thing, I guess I haven't really said this, but in a way, the Brown team is fairly people-friendly. They are a monarchy. There is no democracy. However, the leader of the Brown team is pretty much all for the people. So they find it insulting that the Circle team tries to uphold a form of democracy, for the peopleness. However, they're just not really for that, especially the Purple team, who is a warmongering aristocracy at this point. So the world is becoming unstable. And this is the effect of large expansion and lack of democracy. The world is slowly turning towards war. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's episode. I hope you're excited for the next one because it will be a big one. The next episode of this series will be huge, and it will change a lot of trajectories for a lot of countries, and maybe we'll see a lot of new ones, or maybe we won't. Maybe we'll see a lot of annexations, maybe we'll see the good guys win, maybe we'll see the bad guys win. But I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and if you did, make sure to show some support. Let's try to get this video to 3,000 likes. In the last episode I said 2,000 likes, you guys crushed that, so let's try to get to 3,000 likes, and that shows me that you guys want to see the next episode of this series. And maybe we'll even go for 4,000 likes. That's a lot, that's asking for a lot, but if we can get there, that'd be cool. 3,000 is our main goal, but if we can get to 4,000, maybe I'll throw in something extra in the next episode. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video. And of course, thank you to all the super fans. This includes Mr. Bonk7, Patrick Clauser, Switzerland Lowell Productions, German Edits, Georgie Badev, Kylie Speaks Plays, HammerToad45, Connor the Gamer, Poland Country Ball, Yakko, Nevada Garbage Trucks, and DW Cool Dude. Once again, thank you guys.